sugarcoat it, that's obviously more expensive than just taking the time to do this, but that's why it's something that only pros do. The Wither isn't an easy fight, especially on Bedrock Edition, but that's only when you spawn it like this. Since if we were to take our Wither and put it horizontally, underneath the return portal in the end, it'll be trapped inside of the bedrock, and able to harm us or anything around us. It doesn't even leave a big explosion like it usually does. And at that point you could kill it yourself, or you could summon in a couple of iron golems nearby and have them do the job for you. Or my personal favorite way of using that same iron to place down this hopper minecart entity cramming killer. It might be a little loud, but it definitely gets the job done. This is one of the most useful features in Minecraft, and it's off by default. But when you go into the accessibility settings and turn on the subtitles, then you can use those for valuable information about the world around you. So even if you don't hear something quite right out of your headphones, you'll still be able to see that sure enough there's lava popping nearby, and even which direction it comes from, allowing you to much easier find things like lava lakes, blazes, and so much more. And it's also a good way to catch your friends' pranks before they happen. Really, for how much screen real estate that we're giving up here, this subtitle feature more than makes up for it. We've talked in the past about the fastest way to fly with an elytra, but what about the furthest way to fly with an elytra? Well, if you want to start talking about angles and degrees, you should know that if you fly 40 degrees downwards and then 40 degrees upwards, that zigzagging will allow you to fly much longer distances. And honestly, I just love doing this because it reminds me of Super Mario World. Instead of using scaffolding to build yourself across an area, here's why you should use slime blocks. Because while they might be slow to move on top of, they're definitely not slow to break. Even with just your fist, you can instant mine through slime blocks. I mean, you could do the same with TNT too, but something tells me that slime blocks are a lot safer than that alternative. And then if you fall off your pillar, you'll also have that solution right in your offhand. Place one of those down, and you'll have successfully clutched yourself back to safety. Normally in Minecraft, Steve jumps 1.15 blocks tall, which means he can jump one block with a little bit of clearance over it. But all of that's pointless, since with this Bed Wars tip, we can actually find a way to get ourselves up 3 blocks high in about as long as it would have taken us for a regular jump. All you have to do is sprint, place a block underneath, jump, and then place 2 blocks underneath yourself. And off of just that simple maneuver, you can do this fast and get 3 blocks of jump height. So if you got 3 blocks, you can jump 3 blocks. I think that's a good trade-off. If you don't yet have the mending enchantment, you'll want to pay attention to this, because when you take those non-enchanted items and mix them together like this, it's not just the 2 durabilities that add up, but rather that repaired item will have the sum of the 2 items durability, plus an additional bonus of 5%. And hey, you did all of that without consuming any XP, which I again think is pretty useful. So if you're getting a lot of armor drops from your mob farm, this could be a good way to bring them back up to usefulness. Since even if these 2 items wouldn't add up to a full durability item, with that 5% repair bonus, it goes right up to clean and pristine. All of which without ever having to touch an anything. If you have trouble fighting mobs at night, then you might want to brew up some weakness potions. Since surprisingly so, these can render a lot of mobs completely useless. I mean, you'll see as much if we use it on a zombie. It goes to do their attack animation, however, you don't even receive a damage tick or a knockback when they do it. And folks, that's on hard difficulties. And it's not just zombies either. This will happen for slime, spiders, and even silverfish. And perhaps my favorite yet, if you use a weakness potion on a cave spider, that'll prevent it from poisoning you too. Which really makes these ankle biters seem a lot less intimidating when you use it like that. It can often be tough to make an inescapable trap in Minecraft, especially when they got endgame gear. Though the new lava cauldrons might just give us the perfect solution. Now, by themselves, they behave just as regular lava. But when partnered with honey blocks, these become a lot more dangerous. Since you're still affected by the honey's sticky qualities while you're in the cauldron, the player can't jump out of the pot to save themselves. And there you have it. Just with these 2 blocks, we made a trap that you simply can't jump out of. And if you pair this with a fall trap, you'll be sure to stick your foe right in the hot seat. And for their sake, I hope they packed a potion. If you're building your mob farm without an armor stand, then you're doing it wrong. Since strange as it may sound, having an armor stand set up like this in the middle of your mob farm makes it so that when you use a sweeping edge sword, you don't have to worry about wasting one of your swings on a dying mob. Since anytime that you attack a mob with sweeping edge and it dies in the spot, then it just absorbs the attack without doing anything else. But attacking an armor stand alleviates this. And that gives us the best option for crowd control. And it also means that if you're swiping at the armor stand, you're not going to take any thorns damage from any mobs that happen to spawn with it. If all it costs is a training dummy to help you deal with these other dummies, then that's something I'm willing to take. Now I know that most of us would avoid quartz until we need things like comparators or daylight detectors, but in truth, even if you have no plans of building with it, it's still a good block to mine. Truth be told, nether quartz ore drops so much XP that when you don't have yourself a proper XP farm, this could be a great way to get yourself up into the higher levels. I mean, for just about 20 to 30 30 minutes of your time, you can go from 0 to level 30 just like that. And even though we're still doing this in the Nether, I think you'll still find this is much safer than having to kill the equivalent amount of mobs in the overworld. You want to know the fastest way to trade in Minecraft? I'll give you a hint, it doesn't use any kind of big system like this. But rather, the most useful tidbit that you can know just relies on the spacebar. The way you do it is simple. You click on the trade you want to do, you click the item, and then you hit spacebar to refill the commodities that the villager wants. And just like that, repeating a cycle of going spacebar click, we can completely trade through the villager's options before it needs to restock. And while this gets particularly helpful if you're trying to batch a lot of trades with something like a Fletcher, if you have villagers existing in your world from older versions, then they might be bugged in a way where they can trade infinitely. And then when you use this trick, you're pretty much set for life. So if you got the key on your keyboard, you might as well use it. Before you grow the tree with bone meal, throw an ender pearl up to the sky, so that when you bone meal it, you'll land on the top of the tree. At which point, you don't have to worry about making yourself a staircase up as you're cutting down the tree. You can just take it all down in one go. Just make sure to have yourself a nice pair of feather falling boots. Otherwise, all the time that you would have saved is going to be wasted having to die to the ender pearl's fall damage. I feel like lily pads are an often forgotten block in Minecraft. And more often than not, they just end up being a nuisance when you're trying to navigate through the swamp on a boat. But the truth is, if you happen to grab some of these and keep them in your inventory, then it's possible that if you come across a body of water, all you have to do is just sprint and jump, and then place the lily pad underneath your feet, and you'll have yourself an easy way to scale a body of water, regardless of how deep it is. Although trapdoors are made out of wood, they don't burn in lava. Yeah, I don't get the logic either, but we don't have to understand it to know that we can use this to get ourselves quite a bit of diamonds. Since whenever you come across a lava pool, all you have to do is just bring around a crimson or warp trapdoor like this, and then flip it open to get yourself the diamonds at the bottom of the lava lake. But just be careful, because even if the trapdoor doesn't burn, your diamond's definitely good. Mud makes for a great building block, so it's something that you want. But getting mud like this is definitely a pain. So rather, we should take after this example and convert all of our mud into a body of water. By placing all of your dirt in a row like so, we can then offhand the water bottle and then hold a shovel in our main hand so that when we hit right and left click at the same time while moving forward, we both convert the dirt to mud and collect it. And while it could definitely take a few tries to get it to sync up properly, once you do, it's hard to look at this comparison and say that you're not saving time. It's a lot more satisfying and a lot simpler. I'll take both of those. Before you spend a single iron ingot on making yourself armor, you should instead craft yourself a shield for the low price of a single iron ingot. Now, they require you to do more than armor to keep you protected. There's many cases where just holding up your shield can save you from a lot more than diamond armor would. Not just zombies and skeletons, but creepers also get nullified pretty hard by this too, making this a practical choice when you start out. And if you don't yet have the iron to make yourself a shield, then you can still put those 5 oak planks to use in a different way. I'm serious, but just crafting a boat, we can save ourselves from a ton of damage. For instance, if a hostile mob's coming towards you, just place down the boat and you'll be stuck in place, which is especially useful for things like slippery mobs like Endermen. Or if you don't have yourself a water bucket that you can clutch with, just place down the boat, row it off, and you'll be completely safe when you reach the ground. So even if you didn't spawn next to an ocean where you'd need one of these, I think you'll find it'll be just as useful on shore as it would have been on the water. If you build your cow farm like this, you're doing it inefficiently. And instead what you should do is you should bait your cows into a 1x1 hole like this, with a hopper and a chest underneath them. So that, when you continuously breed them, that entity cramming limit's gonna kick in, and after you have 24 cows in your farm, eventually it'll start to kill off the other cows, and you'll have a fully functional automatic farm without even needing that big of a footprint. This Minecraft crop farm might look nice, but it's inefficient, since the way that it is in the game's code, you actually get better results from your crop farm if you plant them in rows like so. And honestly, we should have known that this was in the game from the beginning, considering the fact that village farms are planted this way as well.
Hey Nathan,
Going on inside their head than just
I'm gonna chill out for a minute.
This could be really useful if you don't have bone meal yet to speed up the process in an auto farm. Here's the best way to kill blazes. Since with a looting 3 sword in your main hand and snowballs in your offhand, we're able to throw those at the blazes in the spawner and still get the looting effect applied to them, which without a doubt is one of the cheapest ways to get looting attached to your weapon. It doesn't even take a hit to the sword's durability. And while you can unfortunately only hold 16 snowballs at a time while doing this, with how effective snowballs are against blazes, you're still gonna be alright. And as long as you save some of the snowballs to make a snow golem farm back home, it's also renewable, and you can't beat that. Ever since 1.16, AFK fish farms have been nerfed. I'm not gonna deny that. But what they lack in treasure, they still have a lot to offer. For one, fish. But there's also plenty of experience points that you can get from fishing as well. And when it's this easy to build, there's really no reason to not have one of these in your world. Especially if you place it next to another place where you need to AFK. That way you're activating 2 farms at once, which alone would be a good deal. Which is made all the better by how much food you're able to get from this method. Just waterlog a fence, place down a golden pressure plate on top, and then with an iron trap door and a note block placed like so, we'll have ourselves an infinite food farm, regardless of where you put this in your world. When we talk about Minecraft traps, cake probably isn't top of your list. But here's why should be. Since silly as it may seem, if you trap your friend in a case of cake like this, and then replace the floor underneath them with a piece of soul sand, then when we add in a water source block, we'll have trapped them inside of a bubble stream. And just that little bit of bouncing around is going to make it very tough to break the cake. And at that point, their best way out is if they're hungry, which I've never seen anyone eat a full cake in Minecraft, so they might be there for a while. If you're like me, then you're terrible with a bow and arrow. And unfortunately for us, that makes it really tough to get this advancement for the bullseye. Don't worry, this will make it simple. Since all we need to do is put a trapdoor on top of our target block, shoot an arrow right into the center, and then once we run 30 blocks away, we can have either a friend or redstone flip the trapdoor open. At which point it counts it as if we shot the arrow from back here, and we easily get the advancement. And hey, you can do the same for the sniper duel achievement as well. Just switch out the target block for a different kind of target. Easy as that. As soon as you start to get resources that you need to smelt, you should not be wasting time individually putting them into different furnaces. Instead, with the help of the chest boat, we're able to position one of these on top of a bed of hoppers so that it'll evenly disperse all of our items across all of these different furnaces. And just like that, we're smelting 9 times faster than we would in a regular smelter. Change them out for blast furnaces, it goes up to 18 times faster. And then by doing something like Puffing Fish HQ shows off in this design, we can have another chest minecart go around the outside and fill up all of our furnaces with fuel. And don't worry, they store the XP, so when you eventually go through and break all these furnaces, you're still gonna get the rewards that you want. There's really no downside to doing this. And if you're looking to find the iron to build that simple super smelter, your best bet isn't to find it down in the caves. Since of the ways that ores generate since the Caves and Cliffs update, you're actually gonna have pretty good luck finding this up in the mountains. And if I'm being honest, even if that was true, I wouldn't want to go dig inside of a mountain to find my iron. But the good news is, you don't even need to. From just mining iron on the surface of the mountains, you can end up with stacks of the stuff. And not to mention, it's a lot safer than heading down into a dark cave. You can also find coal up here too, just so you have something to smelt all that iron that you're getting. Lighting up your base is great, but you never want to be too obvious about it. Having a torch on the ground doesn't look the best, is what I'm trying to say. But luckily, there is a way for us to hide it. Since if you place down a torch and then have an armor stand entity drop on top of it, then after you suit up that armor stand with whatever armor of your choice, then you'll have successfully made hidden lighting within your base. Now, I'm not saying that you should go and spam a bunch of armor stands around your base. That looks more awkward than torches. I think looking for little alternatives like this can really make a difference when you can. Every time that you see a hopper, there's a hidden cost of 5 iron ingots and a chest. But what if I told you that a way to cut down on this is to just use the chest and forget the hopper? Instead, alternating like this lets us cut down on how much iron that we have to spend. And the hoppers and chests will still flow the way that we're used to. So if you haven't yet set up that iron farm, this would be the choice that I'd pick for you. Here's how to turn your allays into a deadly weapon. Since even though they can't equip it, if you give them a piece of Thorn's armor to hold onto, then any mobs that try to attack them will also take damage from that. And as you can see in this example from Ray's-Works, if you tie your allay to a lead and then have a mob attack you, you might just have yourself the deadliest balloon in Minecraft. But if you do want to try this out, I have to give one warning, which is that even though the allays tend to regenerate a lot of health, there are still a few mobs that can kill them off. So to keep them safe and on your side, you might want to have a couple of allays doing this. That way the damage is getting evenly dispersed amongst the crowd. And if you really need to keep your allays from dying, then your real get out of jail free card here is that if you give your allay a totem of undying, then they can use it just like we would. And there you go. You take them from hardcore mode right back into regular survival. Or if the allay's not the only mob that you want to keep safe, then with the fox as well, you can do the same. But unfortunately, they're a little bit tougher to get the totem too. Since for the fox, you need to throw the totem onto the ground for it to be picked up. But once they have it, it doesn't matter what kind of polar bear gets nearby. They'll be left unscathed, and you'll have a very confused polar bear as well. Snow golems melt in
I
the
don't know
desert.
that
It's not much of a
reference.
surprise. Even Frosty the Snowman could have told you that. But what you might be surprised to know is that if you use a fire resistance potion, that'll allow your snow golems to survive in hot climates. And yes, that even includes the nether, as silly as it might seem. So if you have a couple of these lying around,
Oh, yeah.
you could set up a couple of snow golems, splash them with this, and use those to help you eviscerate through that blaze spawner. Just get ready for the rude awakening when the potion effect wears off, and you're left with nothing more than a pile of snowballs in front of you. I guess nothing good ever lasts, huh? Here's how to make your boat self-driving. All you gotta do is create a 3x3 area of water, and then place down a fence gate on this third block here. At which point we can break these blocks and cause the water to flow, and we'll have given ourselves an automatic way to drive our boats. If you need to quickly get rid of some fire in the nether, then a good way to do that is by brewing up a couple of splash water bottles. Since these not only extinguish ourselves when we catch on fire, but they can also clear this plus sign shape out of the fire that catches on the ground. So if you need to make sure that your items don't burn, it might help to throw down one of these. That way, even if you burn alive, at least your stuff won't. If you're building a farm, you might want to use mud blocks instead of grass or dirt. And the reason for this is that mud blocks are just 1 pixel smaller in their hitbox than grass or sand blocks. And all that 1 pixel means is that items are actually able to be pulled through a hopper. And there there you have it. Just with that simple change, our whole farm design just got so much cheaper. And not to mention the rates get better as well. Really, for the price of crafting a water bottle, it's worth doing this at your next farm. Let's say you need to move your pet dog, but you don't want to risk it dying while you're running across the treacherous landscape. Well, no worries, RaiseWorks has you covered. Since by attaching your pet to a lead and that lead to a fence post, we can use a piston like this so that when the item despawns, then your pet will suddenly teleport that long distance just like that. And through the help of a chunk loader like this one, we can make sure that this design never unloads. That way, with whatever timer you build, it's gonna work just fine. And most importantly, it means your feline friend can travel thousands of blocks, all without having to move a muscle. Can't say I'm not a little bit jealous. If you live in a village, keep this one in mind, since by attaching an observer or pressure plate next to your bed with a bell getting powered, then we make sure that when we wake up, the bell will ring and the villagers stay inside long enough for the zombies to burn on the outskirts. Otherwise, without this system, they might go outside, get a few residual zombies, and you'll have a couple of zombie villagers burning out there as well. So if you already killed the iron golem around here, then the least you could do for the villager population is put in this bell system. And then we all avoid the rude awakening of having your village be completely ransacked by zombies. If you're able to find food on land, great, but we're not always so lucky. So instead, you might have better chances of going to find yourself a river so that you can kill salmon. For one, they're super easy to kill. With just the right stone tool, you can kill one in one whack. And not to mention that even when you get rid of all the salmon inside of the river, when you come back later, they do respawn inside of the water. Oh, and they also have a small chance of dropping bone meal, which can itself be useful in finding yourself a food source that's renewable on land. And look, I'm not someone who likes seafood, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Suspicious stew is a great food source, but it's not great to craft, especially when you can't stack them. So if you can't easily hold on to a stack of suspicious stew, the next best thing is to get yourself a mushroom. And not just anyone, but if you shock it with lightning, sorry little guy, and then feed it the flower of your choice, preferably a dandelion, because it's the best one, then that's how you get an infinite amount of suspicious stew. Thought worth mentioning is that the flower only works once per. So if you wanted 64 saturation suspicious stew, you need 64 dandelions. Luckily, those are easier to farm than the other suspicious stew. It's a simpler trade-off. Skulk sensors are very useful, but they're also very noticeable. But if you want to keep their function while losing that fidelity, then it's worth noting that by waterlogging a skulk sensor, then they'll be silent, but still behave normally. Now granted, this doesn't make them entirely discreet, since the sound waves are still visible, but as we can verify from the Minecraft subtitles, there's no sound that's given off from the skulk sensor itself when we do this. But when you're trying to use a skulk sensor for a hidden trap like this, then anything you can do to make it less noticeable is gonna go a long way. After all, it just takes one little detail for them to notice, and the whole operation to go belly up. For the price of a water bucket, I'd rather stack those odds in our favor. Whether you're playing on easy or hard mode, mob proofing is an essential chore on your to-do list. And while light level can work, that isn't as much of an option in the nether. So if you're trying to get piglins to stop spawning in your travel tunnels or next to your fortress farm, then an easy to get solution is a moss carpet. Now initially, it might seem ridiculous to try and put vegetation next to lava, but apparently, moss carpet doesn't burn, making it pretty ideal for the lava landscape. Though I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that even though this doesn't burn next to lava, flowing lava will still break these the same as flowing water. But as long as you keep that in mind, you'll be safe. Or safer, at least. If you want to fix your item stream, consider adding a slab in place. Since as DocM showed off on Hermitcraft, just adding one of these in can make it easier for our items to stack together. And now the bone meal entities will wait until they have enough mass to eventually get pushed over. And that'll also help you to get some more space in between your items, which is definitely a plus when hoppers move so slowly. And perhaps the real icing on top of all of this is that when you have multiple item entities combined into one single stacked item entity, then that'll help to reduce lag as well, which for the price of half a cobblestone block, it's hard to say that isn't worth it. Fire makes for a great decoration in your builds, but fire spread could also ruin your builds. So how do you find a happy medium? Well, the answer comes with Soulfire. Since with this, even if fire tick is enabled, it doesn't matter, because Soulfire will never spread. And while you do obviously change out the color for this example, that's a small sacrifice for keeping the rest of your base safe. And come on, it's not like the blue fire looks terrible anyway. I really think that we're making an improvement on both fronts. And at the very least, you can build that new fireplace in your house without having to tear your hair out. We all know bone meal can be a very useful tool to have, but sometimes getting enough of it can be a real hassle. So to keep your farms fueled and supplied going forward, how about we get a bit more creative and turn stone right into bone meal? I know, that sounds crazy, but as members of the community have found out, we can use the new moss functionality to turn stone generators into bone meal farms. And just like that, we've got a self-sustainable bone meal farm that's sure to provide plenty more for your farms in the future. In Java Edition, we trade with piglins like this, but on Bedrock Edition, we can do it so much faster. And the reason for that is that if you place down 2 observers to create an infinite clock, and then attach to that a sticky piston with a gold block on top of it, then when you throw the gold to the piglins to trade, you'll see that they're trading every single tick that's possible. So if you've got enough gold to fund it, I'd say pay up. You get yourself quite the show. With a pillar of scaffolding like so and an observer up top, we can effectively use this to send redstone signals upward like so. All we have to do is have a trapdoor underneath the top of the scaffolding, and that way when the legs on the bottom one update, that signal will move across the top of the system until eventually it's detected by an observer and we get the redstone signal up there. Though I will mention that unlike using walls for this, the higher the scaffolding, the longer the input delay. But for the simplicity and compactness of this design, I think it makes up for this trade-off and then some. Now, nether portals are a necessity, but I could do without the zombified piglins spawning in them. So if you're like me and you're also sick of those unwanted visitors, then with just a turtle-like place like so, we can bait them away from the portal. So sure, it doesn't stop them from spawning, but I'd rather treat the problem than learn how to live with it. And as long as the turtle egg isn't placed on a beach to grow up, it's not gonna hatch and the baby turtle won't object to it either. And if you take the setup from the piglin farm and switch out the gold block for a lightning rod, then when you throw a channeling trident on top, every time that it goes up and down, it'll strike lightning right on the source, giving you an infinite lightning farm, and a workplace hazard if you step too close, which you can then use as a mob converter of sorts. Or if you're crazy, you could do like we did and kill the wither with lightning. It just might take a few attempts. Having chests that we can put in our boats is a great thing, but you might be better using a llama instead, since not only will a max storage llama still let us have some storage, but we can also put a friend on the back of the llama and keep up the same number of seats. That way we're not trading containers for company. Don't worry about getting yourself an iron sword. Instead, with just 3 stone and some sticks, stone axe will do you much better. And if you're able to critical hit and time your attacks just right, you can easily kill off a lot of mobs. And partner with that shield that you just crafted, now you'll be covered on both the offense and the defense, all without having to get more than a single piece of iron. When 1.14 rolled around, Bamboo gave us a very solid way to defend our bases from enemies. With its weird hitbox, we're able to walk through just fine, but the mob AI struggles a bit to make it past the chutes, which is great, but a bamboo barricade doesn't fit in every build. So luckily, we've got something a bit more metal to use instead. Through the help of the copper lightning rods, we can place a couple of these down and get ourselves a mob-proof gate. And hey, if you think about it, they basically turn into an electric fence as well. Though maybe that's better at fending off zombies than creepers. But with a cat to keep those away, then this safety solution's definitely worth a try. If you're playing on Bedrock Edition and hold down shift and jump at the same time on your keyboard, then as you start placing down blocks, it's possible to build a tower 16 blocks high, all without ever leaving the ground. Which at that point, why would you ever need scaffolding? This seemed to do the trick just fine. At first glance, this jump seems impossible, and really it should be. But the truth is that if you happen to turn 45 degrees exactly while you're midair in the jump, then that'll let you jump 2% further than you would normally, which sounds imperceptible, but it's enough to make this jump. Though I can't stress enough how difficult this is to do. I mean, that's why we featured in the possible skills video. Without the help of something like a mod like Tweakaroo, I'd have no chance of pulling this off. But if you can, it just might help you in a pinch. Whether you're playing a game of Manhunt or trying to prank your friend, everyone loves a good trap. And with the help of the dripstone falling entity, we can make a particularly effective one. As it's coded, a dripstone falling from a height of 40 blocks will do the maximum amount of damage. Though, as soon as it goes through an end portal, the fall height doesn't reset, but rather whoever goes through the gate next to me quite the deadly surprise on the other end. Even with the diamond helmet, the odds are that your friend's still gonna get skewered the same way. So if you're looking to make the end off limits, then a couple of stalactites might just finish the job. You can't see it, but there's a hidden ladder here, and it's not one that we made with sticks, but rather with the way that vines and maps overlap, we can mix together an item frame and a map to make our vines completely invisible and the map climbable, which could make it easier to do something like building out your large map on a wall, or better yet, for a hidden entrance. And you don't even have to go that far. You want a reason to do this? Now none of your friends can rotate that map art to make it look bad, since the vine's hitbox is slightly larger than the item frames. And when you got destructive friends like me, that's worth the price of a mission on its own right. Instead of using chests, use barrels instead, since for one, they're cheaper to craft, they cost you 1 less plank for each recipe, and they're also great for small bases, since even if you have a solid block on top of them, you're still able to open them up. And while we can't double their size like we would a regular chest, it's also important to note that if you get a lot of these, they aren't rendered as entities like the rest of the chests, so they cause a lot less lag if you build yourself a barrel monster instead of a chest monster. Now I know that composters don't seem like the most helpful of items, but that might just be because you're using it wrong, since what you need to understand is that the first item that you put into the composter is always guaranteed to fill up the first level, and that's regardless of the item that you're composting. So if you want the maximum efficiency when you're using your composter for bone meal, first put in an item with a low chance of composting hosting for the first stage, and then use higher chance items like pumpkin pie for the rest of the way. That way, you're saving these higher chance items for where they're actually useful, which might not make composters the most useful block yet, but even if they're not useful, at least you know how to use them now. Most players think of doors as just that, a door. But folks, there's so much more than that. Since in Java Edition, you can use these doors for some pretty important things. Like if you're underwater, you can place one of these down and have yourself a standing safe bubble of air. Or you can also place one of these down and use it to confuse hostile mobs that are coming towards you. For example, if you're in a cave and a skeleton starts shooting at you, place down the door and the mob's probably going to lose track of you. And if you flip the door just right, we can actually use this to scale up a 2-block tall jump, helping you get out of a cramped space or up to a new one. Terraforming a biome is not a simple task, which is too bad because there really are some great results to changing around and creating your own custom biome. So why don't we try and find the easy way out? So, for the sake of an example, how about we try to take the gray hues out of a mushroom fields biome and make them a bit more colorful? And for that, moss is a classic candidate. Since this block loves to replace the ones around it, all we need is a ton of bone meal and plenty of dedication to get the job done. And just like so, we can transform fungus to flora and make this biome a lot more lush to see. And hopefully the mushrooms will like it as much as we do. If you're looking for the fastest way to mine in Minecraft, then you're gonna need this on your leggings. Since even though dive mining's become less popular since its inclusion, with the addition of the Swift Sneak enchantment, now it's worth doing again. Because the name's misleading. It doesn't just give you a swift sneak, but also gives you a swift crawl. And with Swift Sneak 3 on our leggings, we can get some real speed while we're mining in a 1-block tall tunnel. So as long as you don't have claustrophobia, it's worth adding to your to-do list. At the very least, it gives you a reason to go down to the ancient cities, because if we're being honest, the recovery compass isn't worth it. Instead of planting your crops outside, you should tuck them down in a cave. Now, I know crops need light and sunshine and all that, but that's actually the point. Since if you were to plant your crop farm underneath a redstone lamp like this, then when it's time to harvest, all you gotta do is flip a lever on that switch, and all of the crops will be harvested in an instant. At which point, you can turn back on the light, plant all your crops, and get ready to do the same again next week. Making Minecraft builds automatic can often be a tough problem to solve. At the very least, it's not usually that compact. But drip leaf might just be the golden opportunity. Now, clearly, when you stand on these for too long, they're sure to give way to gravity. But what you might not know is that if you stand put just like such, then it's possible to use this as a time-trapped door and put the player right into a crawl position. So if you took that time to wait around, you might just notice that the entrance to a crawl space base was right underneath eye level. And folks, this is just barely scratching the surface for an implementation, and I'll leave the rest for creative people like you. Ender pearls are great for teleporting. That's literally what they're there for. Usually that's just to places that you can see. However, if you were to line up your crosshair just like this and throw an ender pearl right at the base of the 2 blocks, we can actually use this to walk through solid walls. And not just with the transparent blocks either, since if the wall's only 1 block thick, you can walk through just about anything this way. Just keep in mind that you are going to take some damage from the ender pearl, but for an easy way to get out of dodge, this could save you a chase scene. In a lot of ways, deserts can make great locations for bases. You don't have to worry about constant weather changes, there are so many different sandstone blocks that there's plenty of variety to choose from. Though their oasis qualities leave something to be desired. I mean, who would want to live in a place with grass like this? I understand it's accurate, but most of the time, it just looks gross. Though, while the grass color map isn't changing anytime soon, we do have a new green block to play with. Through the help of the moss block, we can make desert grass that actually looks green and lush. And hey, the same goes for using azalea leaves instead of the regular ones. And needless to say, this is what you should be growing. Instamine tools are usually something we associate with late game. I mean, most of the time, you're not even getting this without haste 2 and efficiency 5. Or, you could just use bone meal. No joke, with the new moss feature, it's possible to turn stone and deep slate into some of the easiest blocks to break in the game. And from there, you don't even need a netherite pickaxe. Just a stone hoe is all you need to dig these blocks. So as we start spending a lot more time clearing out the depths below, it might be worthwhile to bring some of this compost down in the caves. And besides, you can't even instamine deep slate with a beacon, so this is no doubt the best option to use. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright? These are 101 weird Minecraft hacks you need to try. Starting with, here's how to use a boat to get through walls. Strange as it may seem, if you row your boat into a corner like this, then no matter how solid the wall is, whenever you dismount, you'll actually be ejected to the other side of that corner. So if you're looking for a sneaky way to get into your enemy's base without breaking any blocks, then 5 wooden planks is enough to do the trick. Just make sure when you leave to get rid of the boat, because nothing's gonna look more suspicious than a few pixels worth of planks poking through the wall. It's a dead giveaway for sure. Instead of using a painting to hide a door, Or use it to hide a chest, or rather the pressure plate to hide that chest. See, as this user shows, we can place our painting supported onto a pressure plate, which then can serve as the redstone input to open up this piston to reveal our chest. And sure, paintings do tend to look a little suspicious, but I doubt many people are throwing items through them. So while your friends and enemies might wonder why it's there, they probably can't figure out that this is the reason for it. Instead of using fences, try out these trapdoors. Since after laying out the trapdoors on the floor like so, when you flip them up, we as the player are able to jump over them, but any mobs that we lure in can only jump in and not out. And this is because of the way the AI is coded, they don't actually recognize it as a block that they can walk past. And there you go. That'll be a fence that they'll never escape, whether they're passive or hostile. This pillager will never attack me or my friends. And the reason for that is a bow. Silly as it may seem, if you get the villager inside of a boat and then sit in the front, then it'll keep trying to shoot you with its crossbow until eventually the crossbow's durability runs out and that pillager is essentially pacified. I mean, he won't sound the friendliest, but he's not going to hurt you either, giving you a cheap way to rehabilitate the raider. Granted, it'll take a lot of time for the durability to run down, but anger management's an ongoing process. Here's how to make your shield 10 times better. To do this, all you need to do is hold up your shield and then go through a portal, at which point, when you reach the other dimension, the game will still think that you have your shield up, but you can sprint and attack like usual, meaning that essentially, we can PvP without having to take any damage. Oh, and don't worry, this doesn't just work in the nether, because if you do the same going towards the overworld, it also works there. Really, the only thing that's going to ruin this glitch is if you right-click with anything other than your shield. But as long as you keep that one drawback in mind, the rest of this should work plenty well. Trust me. If you've ever cared for a plant, then you know that these suckers need a ton of light. But apparently, we can use that to our advantage. We can actually use this for a system that can automatically harvest crops when the lights go off. You see, the way that this works is that the game requires a certain amount of light level for the crops to be planted. So if we just switch off the redstone lamp, bam, everything is harvested in an instant. And then, since farmland isn't a full block, we can just have a set of hoppers underneath and collect the stuff just like that. Sure, this does share a lot of similarities to water-based systems, and while it might not be a full replacement, you have to admit, it looks pretty cool in action. It might not look it, but this is one of the fastest ladders in Minecraft. Thanks to the unique hitbox of the dripstone spike and the different stages of cake, you can travel up to 9 blocks vertically and 1 block of width. Pair this with a horse's ability to automatically breeze over a single block, and you can find yourself traveling up to 9 blocks in under a second. And if you're dedicated enough and you build one of these from bedrock to build limit, that would only be about 40 blocks wide, which makes these horses seem a lot more worthwhile, even if you do have to use some weird blocks to do it. At some point, I think we've all wanted to be an astronaut, but without $1 billion in the bank, that's a pipe dream for most of us. So that leaves us 2 options. We can either sit around and mope, or start to work in Minecraft science. As it is, we don't have much in the way of rocket fuel, but what we do have is TNT, and a lot of it, which means if we grab a whole bunch of TNT minecarts, we can pack enough of these suckers into a small space to launch us right towards the moon. Though maybe pack some blast protection and totems on Undying to do this. Otherwise, both of you and your dreams would go up in smoke. For any fans of The Shining, I'm sure you're well aware of the Here's Johnny Easter egg in Minecraft. That is, if you name a Vindicator Johnny, then it's going to go absolutely insane against all the other mobs around it. And while this is a fun little reference, we can actually use it for way more than that. You see, by putting this Vindicator's aggression into a mob farm, we can actually have it auto-kill the different mobs that we breed. This does make for a pretty brutal system, but the results are hard to argue with. And as long as you yourself manage to keep a respectable distance between Johnny, he's gonna go right to his work and leave you be. In Minecraft, it's often easy to accumulate your fair share of junk. And while throwing that stuff into a fire is a fun pastime, what if you really want to get rid of something? Like, say through some chance you came across a particularly cheaty piece of netherite. Well, if you don't have a cactus on hand, then there is one option that we tend to neglect. Items are entities, just like you and me. And that means that these things have a kill switch. So if you take an anvil sky high and drop it on a thing of items, it'll delete the stuff from existence. It's almost like we're creating our own kind of item execution system. But if you really want to get rid of your friend's diamonds, then this will do the trick and then some. Using waterlogged leaves, we can see through walls. And here's how. If you're on bedrock, first dig a canal of water, fill it up with leaves, and then go beside them and till the soil with a hoe. And by doing this, we get exactly 1 pixel of window to see through the world. And it would seem that the reason this works is because the game doesn't render blocks that the player can't see. And since the water inside is supposed to be invisible from all sides, it's not actually rendered. Though it doesn't recognize that we tilled the soil next to it, so we do get a sneak peek through the glitch like so. I think every kid's wanted to be a spy at some point. I mean, why else would there be so many different spy items available at book fairs? It's supply and demand, folks. So, while I'm not saying you'll become a full James Bond in Minecraft, this might at least put you one step closer. Secret messages are a classic bit of spy technology, but even when you use the message command, that isn't always secure. So, if that's the case, let's turn to invisible ink. otherwise known as nether hyphae. Now, laid out on the ground, these don't look like much, but give your friend a map, and now it's a hidden message. No matter where you go in the world, you've got yourself a private messaging app, and better yet, the server mods will be none the wiser. Sometimes in Minecraft, it can be easy to forget that your actions have consequences. So to give your friend a quick refresher course, then how about we design a trap with that karma in mind? Now, I don't know about you, but on my world, exposed target blocks are a rare sight, meaning that as soon as someone sees one, you can guarantee that an arrow is going straight for the center. But this time, instead of a bullseye, they'll be treated in Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And in this case, that reaction is a poison arrow headed straight for their torso. Is it cruel? Well, it's hard to say they didn't ask for it. Maybe now they'll think twice before they act. Powered rails are a lot of fun to ride around in Minecraft. But if you don't have a lot of gold and redstone, they are pretty costly. So if instead you're looking for the poor player's option, then there's no reason you shouldn't put a saddled pig right in a minecart. Just hop on the back of one of these things and soon enough you're going to be putting pork power to use, getting you going just about as fast as powered minecart rails anyway, making this a pretty solid way to get around, even if it is a little silly looking. But who knows, maybe that's just another plus. It's really just depending on how you see it. Just make sure you're ready to put in the time to learn how to use one of these things. Stop building your cobblestone generators like this, but rather build it like this. As you'll notice, by using a waterlogged stair instead of a water source block, you get a few benefits. Namely, you can't accidentally create obsidian since the water doesn't flow out of the back of the stair. And even though this has been marked on the bug tracker, it's been open for years, so I'm not that worried about it getting patched soon, if at all. Nobody likes waiting. Whether it's waiting in line, waiting for files to download, or a video to buffer, nobody likes their time wasted, which largely makes nether portals a pain to deal with. In survival mode, not only do you have to wait for the whole sickness animation to play out, but then you've also got to let an entire other dimension load on the other side. It's not exactly speedy, to say the least. But if you've got some items, you may be able to cut that down. You see, by using nether portal chunk loading, all it takes is throwing an item to the other side, and then all of a sudden, it'll do all of the loading for you. So going forward, maybe take the time to hit the Q key. Might just save you some down the road. Entity cramming is an often forgotten rule of Minecraft. For those who don't know, the idea is that if you get more than a set amount of mobs in a 1x1 spot, then the game is going to apply steady damage until that number drops below the threshold. But unless you're doing some insane breeding on your cows and sheep, most of us don't even brush up against this. Though it could be surprisingly useful, particularly through minecarts. In this example, we've got a whole bunch of hopper minecarts that can fully squish the nether star out of a wither. I'm being serious, even one of the biggest bosses of the game could get hopelessly crushed by the limitation, proving that sometimes the greatest weapon is just some well-kept guidelines. Minecraft staircases should be straightforward, but as we've shown in the past, there are plenty of weird staircases that we can put to use in our worlds, and this is no different. What might look like a random mix of blocks and foodstuffs is actually the fastest walkable staircase in the game. The truth is that the way that these hitboxes are laid out, it's just so that we can stand in the middle and climb these staircases seamlessly. And sure, a proper spiral staircase would look much nicer, but if you want the speeds as you climb up to your mountain, this is hard to beat. Horses aren't that popular for travel, which is fair because they're quickly outclassed late game, but they might still have one thing going for them. See, in the Bedrock version, we're able to place blocks under us in a speed bridge like so. But what's better still is that this even works on horseback, meaning with the right speed, we can even speed bridge on a horse, which is wild to see. And even if it isn't as practical as an elytra boost, I've got to admit that this is a lot of fun to mess around with. So if you're looking to bring your items across a gorge, maybe just grab a pack mule and do the trek like so. Here's why you should break your end portal. See, by using this trick, we can smash the end portal frames and turn our portal into a fully functioning duplication machine. And really, this isn't just for sand, but it'll work with any gravity-affected block. So if you need a bunch of concrete powder, gravel, or whatever, this works quite well. Just make sure you have a collection system on the other end. Otherwise, it'll be a mess when you go through. TNT duplication machines are a great thing, but they are a glitch, meaning that eventually Mojang plans to remove them. And when that happens, it's going to be a lot harder to explode things in the overworld. But there might just be a new avenue to future-proof our big banging bombs. While a lack of legitimate sand farms makes it tough to get renewable TNT, respawn anchors are a different story. Yeah, thanks to piglin bartering and witch farms, they're farmable, albeit a little complicated. But the trade-off for that hard work is a much larger explosion. So whether you're trying to excavate a mountain or take care of one of your enemies on the server, these might just be your next demolition dream. Here's how to wall jump in vanilla Minecraft. See, with a little bit of skill and good timing, you can jump and place powdered snow underneath you and use that to climb up a wall. It does take a bit to learn, but once you got that down, you'll be scaling walls left, right, and center, all without leaving any evidence behind. Instead of using full glass blocks to change the color of your beacons, try using a glass pane instead. The way that it is, a glass pane fits exactly inside the beam of the beacon, leaving you with a seamless color change. And what's more, the color changing in the Java edition is additive, so you can keep adding on those different color panes and make colors that aren't even a part of the original 16 that were given, which will allow you to create some of the crazy color palettes that you see on Reddit. And you could do it all for cheaper than you would with a full block of glass. Anyone who's ever messed around with a mob farm knows this problem, because after all, even though it is great to have the mobs up on the spawning platform, we do eventually want to get them down to, well, their inevitable demise. And in a lot of cases, water buckets work great for that, except if you're in the nether. You see, in that dimension, we got to get a bit more creative. And luckily, gas sweepers are just the thing for that. As it turns out, the large hitbox of a ghast is perfect to just sweep other mobs off the spawning platform. So if you're willing to get the hands, arms, feet, and legs of this big thing inside the vehicle at all times, this is definitely the way you can make your mob farms in the nether. When you're idling at a farm in Minecraft, there's not a lot to do. I mean, most of us would just go off and do something away from the screen, but if that's out of the question for you, you'll have to find some other way to be productive. Now to start, get out a book and quill. And no, this isn't to take notes or anything, that book's actually our project. You see, the way that Minecraft scrolls through different pages, it's actually possible, in some weird way, to make flipbook animations in the game. Is it limited? Sure. But remember, someone remade Star Wars in ASCII art, so the possibility is pretty high. So if you're going to be killing the time anyway, then you might as well make yourself a magnum opus. Redstone timers can be a bit complex to build, and while sure, there are comparably simpler options, like hopper clocks and such, if you're really looking to make a no-brainer redstone clock, then this is your candidate. As you'll see, our solution here is gravity, and a violation of the Geneva Convention. By having a mob stand on top of some turtle eggs, there's a set amount of time before they crack. So, given that, there is a theory that you could form some kind of timer using turtle eggs. Is it immoral? I guess it doesn't seem the nicest, but if you're really looking for a timer that's light on redstone, this does do the trick. So maybe just keep this behind closed doors and don't let your visitors know how the sausage gets made, alright? Stop using fireworks for your elytra. Instead, try a dolphin. No joke, if we take after this user's example, all we have to do is attach a lead to a dolphin, start swimming in the ocean, and then once we build up enough speed with the dolphin's grace potion effect, we can go straight from swimming right up into launching into the sky. And while that's ridiculous enough on its own, it's funny to realize that we're not the only one that takes flight. So make sure that you and your dolphin buddy landed somewhere safe. Shields are a very useful tool, but once you're holding one of these, speed is the last thing on your mind. Though, the Bedrock Edition might have an interesting solution for that. Here, when your friend holds a shield, we can punch them multiple times and still get the knockback, which has led some of the community to discover a technique like this. Here, we can alternate shield usage between the two players and essentially create a ladder of sorts. No joke, you could even use this to jump 6 blocks high in some cases. And not to mention that using this properly could also help you to clear horizontal distances as well, making these shields a lot better for traversal than any of us thought. This composter doesn't look like much, but it's actually my base. Don't believe me? Here, I'll show you. If we just step inside and throw an item right into place, a hidden hopper minecart will trigger and cause this redstone machine to push us right into place. And bam, hidden entrance. And while it's hard to notice what's happening from above, this Reddit user's post makes the mechanics a lot more obvious. Just make sure you place this in a village where it makes sense for there to be a composter. Otherwise, this hidden base could just stick out like a sore thumb. Anyone who's ever put together a sweet berry bush farm knows that you gotta keep the foxes away from it. But if we put it in a system like this, we can actually use that mechanic to our benefit. Wouldn't you know that as soon as that sweet berry bush is ready to harvest, that hungry fox will scout it out and get it ready back down into your hopper minecart. Which is great and all, but it just makes me wish that sweet berries were an actual better food source. Because when they're just this easy to put together, there's no reason I wouldn't want to put one of these in my world if it was practical. But in the meantime, unless sweet berries get a boost, I think it's gonna be the foxes enjoying this more than us. I use a ladder when you could use a door. Odd as it may seem, all it takes is placing a door in a 2-block hole like so, and we can flip it back and forth to climb ourselves out of a hole. Though why you'd be carrying a door instead of blocks seems unlikely. But this might still be a perfect setup for any kind of escape room concept in the future. I think we've all known that one person who learns how to MLG water bucket and then uses it non-stop. Like, I get it, it's a practical skill, but I don't understand using it to get down from a 4-block drop. So alright, if we're both fed up with it, then why don't we teach them a little lesson? But the question we'll have to solve is, how do you stop water? Because really, unless you're in the nether, there are not many ways to stop a water bucket. Unless we take it up a step, by using this upside down step. Since half slabs can be waterlogged, when they try and land, they'll be greeted to their bucket emptying, and no prayer of a clutch save, leaving you victorious and them totally confused about what just happened. Getting an elytra is a great thing, but getting to the end cities, not so much. And unfortunately for us, it's always tougher to get an elytra when you don't already have an elytra. So to save yourself the headache of building across the end void gaps, why don't we get a bit more technical instead? See, with the help of a flying machine, we can build a vessel perfect for the journey to the outer islands. Now, granted, stopping or turning the ship might be a bit of a problem, but with the proper planning, this could save you from placing thousands of blocks while searching. And if you ask me, I'd much rather take this passive option compared to that. If you're having trouble finding the dead coral for a TNT duplication machine, don't sweat it, just use glass. No joke, even though it's a less popular way of performing this glitch, all it takes is a setup like so using observers to make an equally effective TNT duplication machine. And you might find this could be even more effective on a skyblock world, where coral isn't exactly close by. And in any case, it's just nice to be able to build one of these without having to need silk touch right away. Turtle eggs don't seem to do a lot. Like any baby, these things are quite the liability until they grow up, but that might just be our biggest asset. Since these eggs crack under the simplest bit of pressure, we can make an extremely easy trap. Just sneak one of these little guys under a thing of carpet, and then, as soon as any zombie or ne'er-do-well comes by, they'll be met with quite the surprise. One jump and that's it, and they'll start tumbling toward their doom. You'll have one less hooligan to worry about. And now you don't have to worry about the egg or the fool. So if you got the silk touch on hand, this might just pave the way for the perfect possibility. Villagers in Minecraft are not a very aggressive bunch, which can make them very fragile to different attacks from mobs. However, using dispensers like so, we can actually give enchanted armor to villagers, and they'll use it. Which means that even though you don't see it, this villager's actually fully equipped with enchanted netherite armor using thorns. But really, where you're gonna get the best results from this feature is by mixing your villagers together with Frostwalker. Put them on a large body of water and get ready to see the new hit show, Villagers on Ice. And better yet, it's gonna mean that the next time the pillagers come through for a raid, they're not gonna know what hit them. Oceans are a common obstacle in Minecraft travel, but luckily, boats offer up an easy solution for that. However, these simple ships could really use an upgrade. So if you're looking to become a proper captain on the 7 seas, maybe use your boat's second seat for a boost. Like, maybe bringing along a witch to offer up some extra artillery support, because luckily for us, their potions throw in such an arc that you'll never get hit. Or maybe you're trying to move house, in which case a llama brings along some extra storage slots for your belongings. And really, whichever you choose, I'm sure it'll be better than just having some lonely trip across the deep blue. What's the difference between this campfire and this one over here? Well, where there's smoke, there's fire, and where there's not, there's string. Sure enough, by using 2 strands of string on top of the campfire like this, we can block any kind of smoke coming out of it, letting us still use this fuel-efficient solution without giving away your location. Think of it as the inverse of the hay bale, turning your smokestack into a smoke lack. Look, at least the trick's better than that pun. When you're heading away for a long trip in the nether, it's always a good idea to pack yourself a snack. This time, I'm actually asking you to go vegetarian, or dandelions to be more specific. You gotta eat a flower. Now look, I get that these don't seem the most appetizing out the gate, but they'll actually make a surprisingly handy ingredient, because while you've been going around making different mushroom stews to fill up in the nether, you could have just added this ingredient and way buffed up the beverage. Since flower type can determine the effect of suspicious stew, using dandelions actually gives you some pretty solid saturation. So, if you're gonna make the bowls anyway, then why not just bring along the special spice and make all of it worth it? If you want to be a pro at Minecraft, then you gotta be able to MLG clutch. But if your reaction time's like mine, then that's disconcerting. It's just not gonna happen. So, a simpler option for us slowpokes is to use chorus fruit instead. Strangely enough, the random teleport feature is actually predictable, or at least predictable enough for us to use. The way it works, it will always teleport you to solid ground. So if you're in midair off of Shulker's levitation effect, then you can just chomp on one of these and be teleported right back to safety. And look, I'm not gonna lie, it maybe doesn't look as cool as a water bucket save, but being able to survive a deadly fall, I think that's good enough for me. If you're not prepared, the Wither can be a tough opponent, especially on harder difficulties. I mean, at the very least, with 300 HP to its name, taking one down isn't usually a speedy experience. Or, so you thought. As it turns out, while we've been wasting our time using swords, tridents, and axes to slay the boss, there's actually a much stranger option for victory. By crafting yourself a chunk of these fully powered firework rockets, then that's all that you need to beat the beast in roughly 10 seconds. Though I should know that for safety, it's probably best to spawn it under a bedrock fountain like such, but after you do that, then you can just simply hold down the right-click button and get ready for the hard-earned nether star. If I wanted to fill up this hole with water, it would take hours of my time. Or instead, I could just use columns of ice blocks like so, and do it in a few minutes. Sure enough, with the way that the game fills up water, if you build up your ice pillars in a setup like this, and then break them all with a high-efficiency pickaxe, it'll flood this hole in a matter of seconds, which is so much better than having to wait around in a pool and do this all by hand. That much is obvious. Iceboat highways are a popular form of travel, especially when paired with a nether hub of sorts. But while these do make for great speed, they're not always a joy to build. So if you and your friends are tired of riding an unfinished highway, you could always try this. With the right amount of slime blocks and basalt, we can make a fully functional ice tunnel building machine. Now, obviously, the redstone trickery on display here is enough to make your head spin. And frankly, I wouldn't even know to start building one of these. But playing in a proof of concept world like this can definitely show off how cool the dream could be. And I think that's worth experiencing. Nether portals are a dream for travel. Surely, being able to teleport anywhere in the world makes transportation a breeze. But going into the nether isn't always a fun trip. So what if we can make portals strictly in the overworld? Well, thanks to ender pearl stasis systems, that is, in some way, possible. After throwing an ender pearl into place at the different locations, all we need is chunk loaders and redstone to connect your overworld portal network. Really, if you've got the time to lay out the redstone, the possibilities with this can be pretty impressive. And once that's figured out, it definitely makes for a snazzy way to get around your base. Now, let me set up the problem for you. You've got a farm where you gotta push mobs into the nether portal. However, as soon as they're there, you can't use something like water to actually get them out of the way, so you're kinda stuck. That is, unless you put any mob inside of a boat in that nether portal. You see, this system utilizes the different boat and mob collisions to do so, and it'll actually push them when you come through the portal, making this a pretty useful thing for when you're trying to move mobs around or using it as a part of your farms. Using this design, it's simple, it's automatic, and most importantly, it's weird, which honestly, I'm fine with all three of those. While Bedrock Edition lets us tie a rope between two fences, Java Edition isn't as nice, which means that in a lot of cases, we don't get to use these ropes as really cool decoration. That is, unless we get creative. Because as you can see, if we tie a lead to a fence and then the other end to a mob like a chicken, we can actually make some pretty cool builds. I mean, look at this. Rope bridges will never be the same again after finding this out. So until Mojang decides to get the rest of us on Java on par with the other people in Bedrock, this is the best way to do it. And I think we'll be tying up chickens with string for a long time being at that rate. Throughout history, Minecraft has had its fair share of cannons. Whether you're caving holes with a TNT launcher or creating a nuisance with a sand cannon, there are plenty of different ways to launch projectiles in the game. And as it turns out, the 1.17 update offers up an even newer addition to that category. As I'm sure you know, these dripstone blocks are not to be messed with. But better still is that we're able to launch these using slime blocks and pistons. Even with a small one like this, the momentum that we add in here could be just enough to make the option lethal. So while everyone else is worried about the differences between stalactites and stalagmites, you'll know that their best application truly is as bullets. I want to show you all my new secret base, and if you can't see it, that's kind of the point. But as soon as we fly down, you'll be able to see that powdered snow can work perfect with secret aerial entrances, since we can fly through powdered snow without losing our speed in the elytra. But as you'll notice from this example, the light can still shine through the powdered snow, so make sure not to do this at night. Or if you do, at least light up the rest of the mountain so that it's not as obvious. This is a high-speed sorting system, and this is how we use waterlogged sea pickles to make it function. Now, as you'll notice, the unique hitbox is specifically 2 sea pickles placed like so, allows for a water source block to align the items perfectly along the edge of the ice block, meaning that we can still use the ice and water streams for a high-efficiency system without worrying about any kind of item traffic jam. And you can see from this comparison, this system would not work without these 2 sea pickles, which seems a lot more useful than just smelting them into some lime dye. Minecarts are a quintessential bit of Minecraft transportation, but while we've all tried to build a roller coaster in the past, I doubt they've looked anything like this. Though that might have been our mistake, since as you can see, these new methods can get some crazy speed. For some reason, a curved track like so allows the cart to rocket along the path, and while the non-powered version trails off at a certain point, this Goldilocks option offers both speed and longevity. So if you're trying to build the next travel system for your underground subway, maybe give this thing a go going forward. One of the key parts of speedrunning is a quick Ender Dragon fight. I mean, how are you going to reach the top of the leaderboard if you can't one-cycle this foe? But while most of us think that beds are the fastest way to beat the baddie, there's actually a much stranger option. Leave it to the crazy minds of the Minecraft technical community to make up this monstrosity, the TNT Arrow Launcher, more affectionately referred to as the Rail Cannon. Being able to deal roughly 1,200 points of damage in a single blow, this machine can one-hit the Ender Dragon. And in fact, the only hope that anyone has of surviving this thing is a Totem of Undying. But if you can't cheat death, then this will take you to a swift one. Why do we have so many cauldrons? Well, in Bedrock, these are actually incredibly useful for pixel art. No joke, by placing a bunch of cauldrons next to one another and then dyeing the water inside, it gives you full control over the color palette. And honestly, I think the dark outlines of each cauldron adds to that 8-bit aesthetic. But this is definitely expensive to do, so you might only want to try this in creative. Unless you've got yourself an iron farm that works as well as this one. And folks, the secret here is all thanks to the unlikely block, the campfire. Now, the way that this works is that we have an iron golem killing mechanism that uses a small spawning platform and a campfire so that the golem can't move away from the campfire and it'll constantly get hit. And thanks to its small size and low cost, it could be made really early into your world. So while it's not as efficient as something like this designed by Tango Tech, much like using a campfire versus a blast furnace, it is a great thing to have when you're starting out. Killing a bunch of chicken with an enchanted diamond sword is a lot of fun. But if you're a busy person, you don't have a lot of time in your hands to do that. So luckily for you, you're actually able to hire a bit of help and pass off that job to a fox. Just like that, they'll take your sword and put it to use against all those different chickens, giving you a fully automatic chicken farm. Anyone who's ever messed around with the technical side of Minecraft is well and familiar with the concept of a mob switch. That is, you get a bunch of withers in a cage, make sure they don't despawn, and no new hostile mobs are going to be giving you trouble. It's a great system, but it's definitely costly. So a simpler and safer option to do is instead having a zombie villager mob switch. You see, if you trade with a villager and then zombify it, this will make them both unable to despawn and also count towards the mob cap. This is actually a great way to put zombie villagers to use and in turn actually keep all other villages safe. Who doesn't love roller coasters? No one I want to hang around with, that's for sure. And it's because of this mutual love of roller coasters that I'm sure we've all tried to set up a thrill ride once or twice. But the real test is what your friends think. Though it's pretty boring to just set them off and wait till they get back. So, to make that journey a bit more inclusive, why not upgrade your ride? You see, since minecarts can pick up entities, and boats happen to be entities, you can essentially make a two-person cedar minecart to ride the rails. So not only do you get a goofier ride to go around in, but you can also build up some surprising propulsion by rowing the boat, which I think we all can agree are pretty great things. Water elevators have become a staple in Minecraft builds. After all, it's quite handy to have a seamless elevator to go from point A to point B, but they don't always fit in with the aesthetic. So to solve that issue, what if we didn't have to see the elevator while using it? As strange as that sounds, it's actually possible. By using honey blocks like so, their hitbox is just small enough to let us ride the water elevator, but not actually enter the bubble stream. So if we put something like item frames and map art on the outside, we get an invisible elevator, all without sacrificing our build's look. Sometimes you don't have the heart to say something to someone's face, but that doesn't have to keep you from sending the message. By just waxing particular parts of their copper wall, then you guarantee that eventually they're gonna get the message, which clearly could lead to some pretty innovative prank ideas, and I'm sure that your brain's already lit up with all the different designs to leave at your friend's base. So while I don't exactly endorse writing mean things for your friends to find, I can't doubt its efficacy. Meaning if you've got the honeycomb on hand, this might just pave the way for your perfect crime, or at the very least, a perfect punchline. Minecraft servers are bound to have their share of lag, which can sometimes be annoying, but also allow for great things like this. See, with the way the connection lag works, we can use the rubber banding in some way to slingshot ourselves forward. So if you have the wings needed, you can ride that connection current to get some impressive momentum. All that needs to happen is that we hit the ground, double tap space, and then keep a sine wave motion of sorts to keep going. And like that, we have the capabilities to bounce across the Minecraft scenery. So if you played enough Super Mario World, that cave feather practice is finally gonna pay off. Here's how to easily explore the ocean. Since while it's tough to see what's underwater from above, if you're sitting in a boat and then move your camera angle slightly down so that it clips into the water, there's a perfect angle where the game doesn't darken what you see below. And there you go, you'll be able to easily see all the blocks illuminated beneath you, giving you a quick way to find any kind of shipwrecks that lie below. And that could be helpful for a speedrun, or for the next time that you're trying to find a heart of the sea. Horses are a lot of fun to ride around, but as soon as you take one to a body of water, you know you're out of luck. I mean, if you're ankle deep, you're fine, but that's the most you're gonna get. Unless, of course, you manage to luck out during a thunderstorm, because then you could get a skeleton horse. And folks, with one of these skeletal steeds and the right amount of potions, you can actually travel underwater riding a skeleton horse. It's a weird form of travel, and I definitely don't see it happening much, but really, how cool does it look to just go down in the depths of one of these things? If nothing else, just take a screenshot of yourself and put it on a metal album. If you've only got yourself one bucket of water, but you still need an infinite water source, just wait for nighttime. Since if you kill a skeleton and get some bone meal, then you can use that to create seagrass, which if you grow seagrass inside of flowing water, it'll turn that into a full water source block. So whether you're playing in a desert, on a skyblock island, or you just don't want to craft another bucket, a bit of bone meal will solve your problem just the same. Instead of growing your sugarcane on dirt or sand, here's why you should use mud instead. See, mud isn't a full block in size, meaning that items can pass through it like soul sand. But we can also grow our sugarcane on top like normal, and that allows us to make this really simple design for a sugarcane farm that's completely lossless, which means we won't lose any of our sugarcane gains this way. Every crop broken is one that we profit off of, and that lets us create an easy design that can stack in all 3 dimensions. Simple as that. The Frostwalker enchantment is a hard one to justify. After all, adding this to your boots means you're locking yourself out of some more valuable choices like Depth Strider. But say you've already got a pair of shoes with the enchantment, then why don't we make the most of it? Now, the 2 key ingredients that we need to add here are Riptide Trident and a Rainstorm overhead. Then, once we've got those, we've got the right conditions to slip and slide our way across the ocean. Simply spam the Riptide Trident and we'll launch ourselves right across the ice highways. And hey, this might even allow your friend to follow behind in a boat, meaning that both parties can enjoy the ride. I think we all can agree the channeling enchantment's pretty great. For one, not only is it fun to summon lightning like your last name is Odinson, but that very lightning allows you to change and manipulate different mobs. So when you're fed up with typical mushrooms and you're looking for a change, well, bam. It's great, but obviously all that lightning can get pretty dangerous. So if you're trying to do your magic without all the pain of electrocution, maybe try this. You see, by placing down an item frame, all you have to do is zap that, and the job gets done the same way. Except this time, no one's getting hurt in the process. Which is nice, because really, there's no point in converting a corpse. Few things in Minecraft are truly unbreakable. I mean, even bedrock can be broken in some form, and that's the unbreakable block. But while we might stand a chance of breaking blocks when we stand on steady ground, it's a different story when they're on the move. Through the help of flying machines, it's possible to make a proper working flying cage trap to take your enemies right up to build limit. But what we really should mention here is that by using blocks such as honeycomb that can't be easily mined, they'll be in for a bad time. As you can see, as the blocks keep moving, the break time keeps resetting. So if your foe doesn't have the proper kit to break it down, they'll be stuck on the one-way journey with no hope in sight. In life, you got a few essential pairings: the sun and the moon, peanut butter and jelly, and if you ask Bugs Bunny, rabbits and carrots. The way that rabbits work in Minecraft is that they'll try to come near you when you're holding a carrot, which means that with a system like this, you can actually build a rabbit carrot detector for secret entrances. It makes for an extremely weird concept, but if you're willing to carry around a couple extra carrots, those might come in handy if you forget your keys inside the base once again. I guess the only ones who don't benefit here are actually the rabbits, because after all that hard work, they're still not going to be able to get the carrot. Foxes, as we know, are a pretty versatile mob. And while they're great for harvesting in different farms, the only pesky thing is that they like to sleep. And while that would make most fox-powered farms pretty much unusable, we can actually solve that by keeping another mob nearby. You see, if we have something like a chicken, for example, next to this fox, then it'll just keep doing whatever we want to and never sleep as long as it's near. But if after all the work is done and you finally want to let your hard worker get some rest, just kill the chicken up top and it'll go immediately to sleep. And you know what? For the kind of graveyard shifts it's been putting in lately, I think that's completely well deserved. Plants can really liven up a Minecraft build, which is why you'll see plenty of different pro builders using this in their base. But while the shrubs and stuff definitely add to the aesthetic, they're not exactly cooperative. And trust me, it's going to be quite the pain just having to plant and replant this one thing just to get it to the right height. So if you're tired of your crops getting a bit too big for their britches, then don't sweat it. There's actually a way to tie this together. By placing string along the top of certain plants, then you can actually make sure that they stay at that height for the rest of history. No joke, all you need is one piece of thread and it works like an Everstone. All evolution stops dead in its tracks, and you don't have to worry about it any other way. Anyone who's ever tried to build something organic knows that it's very tough to get builds to look natural. There's natural things you can work in a game made out of blocks, I guess. But for a thought experiment, say that you want to build an island in the creative world. How do you go about it? Well, if you're like me, then you're looking for the easy way out. And in that case, I'd like to delegate this job to our good friends Grass and set up these in plain dirt canvas, and essentially you can watch a Splatoon turf war take place in real time. And then, after the battle is done, just replace the mycelium with water, and like that, you've got a fully formed island. Or, at the very least, a very solid foundation that you can build off of. Endermen aren't always the easiest to kill. And while the teleporting might be fine in a desert or a plains biome, when you're fighting them in the end, the last thing you want is to get sneak attacked. So, to cut their magic show short, all we need is 5 planks and a plant. After we craft a boat, all we need to do is place that right down next to an Enderman, and that sucker will be locked right into place. No joke, as long as you don't break the boat, you're free to slice, dice, and slay the foe with no hassle to you. I mean, they do still have problems, so I wouldn't recommend getting too close to the bash zone, but as long as you keep you and your axe out of harm's way, then I think you'll find this works pretty well. Don't have a compass? Well, just use a crafting table. No joke, as this user shows, if we just open up the crafting guide inside of a crafting table, we can see the compass sprite. But the thing is, this still updates real time, even if it's just in the crafting book. meaning we can save ourselves the iron ingots and redstone, and instead just use 4 wooden planks for a cheaper compass. Instead of just heading off to bed and hoping that your villagers make it through the night, you should let your villagers know by ringing the village bell that you placed ever so conveniently next to your bed. That's right, the bell isn't just there to notify you about all future uploads, and thank you, by the way, but it can also be triggered by redstone, meaning with a simple pressure plate setup like this, we can ring the bell once at night for the villagers to run into their homes, and then once again to make sure that they stay in their houses a little longer in the morning. That way, any zombies that are outside can burn away, and we'll all be safe indoors. Anyone who's had the misfortune of stepping a bit too close to a bed in the nether knows that these suckers can pack quite the punch. In the end, it's difficult to get rid of your friends in the overworld. So, if you're having trouble getting your enemies through the portal, there is still another avenue. Well, yes, bed explosions are pretty deadly, they aren't unmatched. As it goes, using an end crystal or respawn anchor in the overworld gives you an equal amount of force. And on hard mode, that's going to be a lot of damage. But look, I won't lie, getting one of these set up isn't nearly as easy or cheap as a bed. But late game, it might just be your perfect crime. Elytras are a great form of Minecraft travel, but that's not news to anybody. Though without the proper fireworks, this great invention becomes a failure to launch. But it turns out that all we need is some claustrophobia, and we can shoot off right to the skies. See, Minecraft has something called entity cramming, which happens when enough mobs are packed into a single space. And while there's a limit to this, if we use just one mob less than that in a 1x1 space, we can get some serious propulsion. Apparently, all the little nudges from the various mobs adds up to be a punch of speed for our Elytra takeoff, giving us the tight squeeze needed to reach the horizon. If you have to travel over slime blocks, don't walk, but sneak instead. Since by using the Swift Sneak 3 enchantment on your leggings, we can go nearly double the speed of walking, which granted still isn't that fast, but it's a lot better than the alternative. So silly as it may seem, if you find yourself getting chased, maybe build a bridge with slime blocks instead, so you can keep some distance between you and your pursuers. Okay, hear me out. Pufferfish have a lot more going on than you think. Well, sure, most of us might only care about these things for the water-breathing potions we brew. That's not the whole picture. Actually, that's about the only positive they offer up. Because the rest of the time, they're a tool for evil. Don't believe me? Well, let's put that small hitbox to use, and I'll show you. By tucking a bunch of these poisonous pests underneath the trapdoor, we're fully capable of making a sneaky floor weapon. So if you want to keep some of those house guests from going out of line, then just throw a couple of these into the floor plan, and the message will be clear. I don't think any of us want to get on a bee's bad side. For one, they're just so adorable that you probably don't want to hurt one anyway, but that's not to mention that they can also carry quite a stinger. So, to change their offensive capabilities to defensive, how about we make ourselves a bee army? With this swarm, all it takes is an enemy to be hit by one mistake, and the damage will be done. And folks, if you can believe it, these things can even take down the Wither. Now sure, you'll need a lot of them, and it would probably help to splash them with a Strength 2 potion, but the point still stands that this buzzing battalion can wreck through anything you throw at them. And maybe next time, they'll want to stay on your good side. The new nether stem blocks are a great addition, except for when you're trying to smelt something. Unlike regular logs, these can't be used as fuel in a furnace. They don't burn to a flint and steel, so why should a furnace be any different? But this intentional piece of game design might just have an unintentional workaround. If instead you take those logs out of the furnace and into a crafting grid, then we can craft them into sticks, which by themselves would work as a fuel source, but we can actually do one better. Folks, by crafting those very sticks into ladders, now we're actually getting the best bang for our buck when it comes to smelting, which I've got to say is a big improvement when the alternative was not smelting anything at all. Unless you're using mods, Minecraft doesn't really experiment too much with turrets. I mean, you've got dispensers with arrows, but those are pretty limited in their direction. Really, if you're trying to defend your base from any intruders coming too close, you gotta build a couple of guardian turrets. It only takes one look at these to see just how menacing these things can be. I mean, you step too close and boom, you're targeted on, and it's gonna be a world of pain coming your way. Making the guardians from Minecraft way more like the guardians from Zelda, turning it into way more of a Hyrule castle. And personally, I love that kind of thing. Redstone is one of my favorite parts of Minecraft, but the circuitry isn't exactly a looker. Now, that doesn't discount its personality. I'm sure what's on the inside counts. But to our builder friends, it's all about outward appearances. So in that case, how about we find ourselves a happy middle ground? I wasn't aware of this until recently, but you can actually throw down item frames on top of redstone dust. Meaning, if you add in a colored map of your choice, then you can effectively cover up your tracks. Now,
Oh,
obviously,
wow.
if you're using a bunch of these item frame and map
I didn't know that
combos,
at all.
I do have to warn of some potential lag. But if you got yourself a beefy computer, then I'd be hard-pressed to say this isn't worth a shot. Here's how we use a pig for x-ray hacks. Now, that sounds crazy, but I'm not joking. If you get on top of a saddled pig and then clip your head into the middle of some blocks, then, once you're inside the roof, you'll be able to see all the cave systems light up above you. But worth mentioning is that you have to ride your head into a tunnel of slabs for this to work. That way, you'll be inside a transparent block, which will keep you safe, and that'll cause the game to glitch out and actually let you see everything above you. And if you have that on lock, this should
Yeah,
be a
I
quick
thought
way
the
to get
bee
to the
thing
next
was
cave
pretty
system.
funny too.
Villagers can be a great asset in your Minecraft world, but regardless of how respectable they are with emeralds, these fellas are not the most commendable when it comes to the overworld. And even though their AI is a lot more similar to sheep than Steve, they're nowhere near as easy to corral. So if you two are looking for a trading hall that doesn't have to turn into a kangaroo market, this might be the time to sweeten the deal. Honey blocks, as I'm sure you know, are great for keeping different mobs and entities stuck in place. So the next time that you build a villager's desk, maybe just tuck one of these under the floor mat. That way they won't be able to jump out of dodge, and you'll be able to keep them still for the entire shift. Or if you're not a fan of loud noises, these azalea bushes can also keep monsters at bay. Because of the way that the mob's pathfinding AI works, it can jump over azalea bushes. But obviously, we can do that just fine. So if you're looking for a prettier alternative to the carpet and fence trick, this hedge maze is definitely worth a shot. And thankfully, these don't automatically grow into azalea trees, meaning that this fenceless defense is here to stay. Planting trees around your base can really bring a build together, especially if you design some of them custom. That is, until your friend comes by and decides to break the bottom 2 logs of the tree trunk for a craft. And now, all you got is a bunch of eyesores. Well, to solve that problem, let's teach them a one-time lesson that the Lorax would even approve of. By setting up an observer system like such, we can have it so that when they break the log, the chop gets recognized, and then an explosion takes care of the rest. And better yet, by using TNT minecarts in this way, the detonation gets to near instantaneous levels. So, whichever log they take from you, we can make sure it'll be their last. Honey blocks are clearly a useful tool. Whether you want to keep your villagers in place, mobs out of your base, or fly machine through space, these do the trick just fine. But their sticky qualities can just as easily be turned to the dark side. You see, with the advent of lava cauldrons in 1.17, we can pair these two concepts together and make a particularly sinister trap. Since honey blocks make jumping so difficult, when we throw one of these under a lava cauldron, suddenly the player's no longer able to escape. And with that, this seemingly harmless block becomes one that you gotta look out for. So if you're trying to feel like a Bond villain, this might just be your next interrogation technique. Pufferfish tend to scare really easily. One step too close to this thing and boom, poison. It's a nuisance when you're swimming around the water, but as soon as you put one of these in a pufferfish player detector, it does a lot of work. Rest assured that anyone who stands way too close to this, whether it's you, another player, even mobs and armor stands, this thing will detect them. And then from there, you can use that redstone signal for whatever your choice is, be that a secret entrance or, more likely, a secret trap. It's really startling to see how much damage you can do with one of these systems. If you're going to be settling down in Minecraft, then mob proofing is an essential part of your base. And while placing down a couple hundred torches is great for getting rid of things like skeletons, creepers, and zombies, as anyone knows, the light level does not matter when it comes to phantoms. Even getting something like a mob switch doesn't turn these off, so how do you get rid of them? Well, if you're looking to enlist a feline force, then you can actually use cats to keep away certain mobs. Just like that, any phantoms or stray creepers that try to wander near your base are going to be immediately deterred. And plus, it makes for a lot cuter of a defense than all the other options I've seen. Here's how to raid desert pyramids so much faster. Just use TNT. Since TNT has 100% collection, all we need to do is grab the TNT out of the pyramid trap and then use it to explode the chest like so. And from there, we can hide out in the hole, take barely any damage, and then grab all of the loot in a matter of seconds. And this is also great for any speedrunners that are looking to grab resources like wood or cobblestone out of a village. Just make sure that you use redstone to activate it instead of flint and steel, since otherwise the villagers will take damage because of you, and they'll raise their prices out of anger. Pigs and saddles are somewhat of a laughing stock when it comes to transportation, but what they lack on the ground, they more than make up for in the skies. It turns out that with the right technique, we can tie a lead between an elytra and a saddled pig, and essentially create a 2-person rideshare. Is it practical? I've got no clue, but clearly it's a sight to see. So if you've got both the leads and pigs to spare, it's well worth your time to try this out on the server. And if you start from the right height, you might just clear some serious distance with your friend in tow, which I think is just fantastic. Any Minecraft veterans will know that in PvP, the retreat can be just as important as the attack. So to help out in that defensive strategy, you might just have the solution. See, in Bedrock, if you start sprinting and then backpedal right before your screen finishes zooming out the FOV, we can start to move backwards at the same speed that we move forwards. And at that point, we've got the perfect skillful tactic to keep us active while leaving the fight. And you can even swing your sword while doing this, letting us continue to knock back oncoming enemies. So next time you're getting chased, this might just give you the upper hand, or at least a solid escape plan. Normally, when you want AFK at a mob farm, you gotta use an auto killer. And while those are great, they don't get you any XP, except of course if we throw man's best friend in the mix. Sure enough, by putting a dog right down here at the bottom of the farm, we're able to have it kill all these skeletons for you to get loads and loads of EXP. One great use I've seen of this is putting an AFK skeleton EXP farm right next to your tree farm, which overall makes this a really solid design to use in your world. Just make sure no protection or thorn skeletons happen to get in the mix, because if that happens, you might have to feed the dog. It'll take a couple hits. If you look at an endermite mob, it doesn't seem like it has much use. I mean, it's meant to be an annoyance, except the only ones that hate endermites more than us is, of course, endermen. And for that, we can put these endermites to good use. As soon as they were added into the game, using a stationary endermite to aggro all of the endermen down into a bait and switch has worked really well for these kinds of farms. Just like that, the burning hatred leads them down into a shallow grave. In the past, we had to worry about things like redstone and pistons to get the job done, but here, just put one of these little workers to go, and your machine will be producing and then some. Minecarts and water don't mix, or at least that was the case prior to the 1.17 update. But since then, the Caves and Cliffs update has allowed us to do a lot more in Java to mix these minecarts and rivers like so, which is cool to have parity with Bedrock, but that version still has one major plus. See, the minecarts over here don't lose momentum while entering bubble streams, meaning if we line a nearby lake with soul sand like such, we can bounce our cart right across to the other side. It's definitely a ridiculous way to travel, but who knows, it might be worth adding into your next Splash Mountain remake. Although snow golems try their best, they don't exactly make for the best defense. I mean, unless they're fighting a blaze, these fellas don't even do damage, just knockback. And that's not exactly cutting it for our purposes. So, to make these frosty friends a bit more ferocious, we need to crank up the heat. And for that, I'm actually being serious. In Bedrock Edition, if you put fire in front of their projectiles, then we straight up mix the fire and the ice, get something they gotta fear. And from there, all you gotta worry about is keeping the things safe. But as long as you use something like honey blocks to keep baby zombies from jumping in, then these should keep your villagers safe and secure, all while breaking the laws of physics as well. If you've played on enough Minecraft servers, then you're definitely aware that some people can be griefers. So if you want to give those annoying players more of a run for their money, you can actually trap an Elder Guardian, and boom, you got your own form of anti-grief. Look, it's not perfect. If they have a milk bucket, they're going to be able to get past it, but if they're not prepared, they're going to have a hard time busting into your base. And hopefully that frustration that they feel will be enough to get them off of your lawn anyway. Especially if you trap the thing in obsidian so they're not able to break through. This makes for a pretty solid way to both annoy and hopefully ward off any greedy players. Here's how to take your boat from the ocean right up to sky limit. Since in Bedrock Edition, if you place your boat on top of a pad of slime blocks and then jump on top of it, then once we finally get inside, there was so much potential energy locked in that boat that it'll shoot right up into the sky, giving you a neat party trick to show off to your friends, or who knows, it might even be a cheap way to get an elytra launcher. Getting music discs in Minecraft is kind of a toss-up. Either you find them in a chest, or you spend way too many nights trying to get a skeleton to shoot a creeper dead. Both work, but there's actually a simpler option here. You see, if we actually take that same skeleton and take it right underneath the creeper farm, then we can use that undead mob to get us all the different kind of record drops that we need. And since building a farm like this is mainly going to produce us some creepers, that's going to be a lot of music discs coming into your chests, putting you one step closer to getting that full music disc collection, and the skeletons one step closer to redeeming themselves. Look, I'm sure many of us are curious creatures. It's just human nature, which means that if someone sees a chest out and about, they're going to want to open it. And if that's the case, then this might just open up the door for our perfect punishment. Now, to pull this off, we'll need our chest, some signs, and a TNT to top it off. Since TNT is essentially a redstone-activated gravity block, all we need is an input from a trapped chest, and that'll put this all in motion. They pop it open, the signs break around them, and all of a sudden that sandy floor leads them straight to their doom. And hey, why not even throw in a sign to cover up the trapped chest front? That way, it's even less detectable and even more deadly. Bubble elevators are a great tool to have in your world, because if you're looking for speed from one point to another, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better option than this, which makes them a staple in plenty of players' builds. And that's where this idea comes in. As you'll notice, ender pearls aren't the only thing these things can keep in stasis. Other projectiles such as arrows work as well. So, if you fire a bunch of instant damage arrows along the top and then keep that chunk loaded, then as soon as they come up to the top, they'll be met with quite the rude awakening, which takes their elevator to the top floor and turns it right into a stairway to heaven. Bad traps stick out like a sore thumb, which is why if you see a random pressure plate out in the open, most of us know not to step on it. But that's the whole point of this. You see, we want our victim to expect that it's trapped, break the pressure plate, and then the real trap goes in motion. The item is then sucked up by the hopper minecart, goes into a real hopper, and then a comparator sets off a signal, and the rest is history. Now, while you could be more cruel here by adding in more TNT minecarts, I think this actually could work really well in a rigged desert temple. That, folks, would be a surprise for sure. One that's likely to leave them with no items to their name. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?
Alright, I think I'm gonna go to bed early here. I'm a little tired still. Alright,
What if you
guys.
could make torch arrows to light up faraway places? What if you could use banners for different designs on your bed? And this is every new idea that should be added to Minecraft. And hey, according to the YouTube king, no one's ever subscribed to the channel using their right pinky finger. So if you're up to the challenge, point your 5th digit to that red sub button below. It's free and it helps out a ton. Campfires can already be used to replace furnaces.